Have you ever compared the drawing that you just did to a previous one and saw zero improvement, or even you just got worse? Because I did, and after drawing for a little bit more than 2 years, I realized how to actually make progress faster and avoid frustration. So therefore let me show you 7 the most important lessons that I've learned that will help you improve your art much faster, but also you'll avoid a lot of frustration. So lesson number 1. When I started drawing, what I would do, I would only copy stuff and I would hope that I will improve. But after months, I realized that I didn't really make much progress. Now, why is that? One thing was that I didn't really have a goal whenever I was studying. So drawing faces, poses, bodies, they had no really purpose in them. And because of that, I would focus on all of these things, therefore I wouldn't make progress in any of them. And second one was that I didn't really know what to study, therefore I studied everything at once. So the lesson number 1 is learn and practice the right way. So this method is super simple and everyone can follow. So first, think about the topic that you want to improve. It can be anything: eyes, torsos, fingers, like skin color, or even light and shadow. But here, be more specific with it. Instead of drawing better faces, you can just say drawing eyes. So with a specific goal for study, you can focus on one thing, and therefore you'll make much more progress. Next, prepare the resources that will help you actually learning the topic. And this can be like simple YouTube tutorials, like PDFs, books, courses, whatever will help you. And one mistake that I would always do was simply just watching and consuming a content, a tutorial, without really doing anything. I was just hoping that it will stick in my brain and I don't have to do anything. But we know that it doesn't really work like that. Therefore, watch or read the tutorial, but also follow the steps, follow the tutorials, draw examples from them. But the most important thing is to take notes in your own words, which will help you understand it much better. And these can be simple observations like this muscle attaches here, or you can simplify the eye into this shape, or even like these walls here are parallel to each other. So try to explain the topic, because if you can explain it, then you understand it. So don't just copy the words and the drawings without any thinking. And then we want to actually practice it, and there are 3 easy methods that you can do that. So the first one is time practice, where you just pick references, then you open a program or just a simple timer in your phone, then you just pick how many images you want to go through, then pick time for each. I recommend doing anything between 30 seconds to 300 seconds for each, and then just basically pressing start, and basically after this time you just go to the next reference. And for that I use a simple free gesture search app. You just put your references, you set time, you set how many images, press start, and it does everything for you. Not sponsored. And because of the limited time, you'll be focused mostly on the most important things. So you won't really go into details. You'll look for the big shapes first, which is super important to actually learning it. Next is studying the reference. So here you basically have a topic that you want to improve, and pick a reference and just put it into your canvas. So try to observe it, look for the relationships between landmarks, look for the angles, for the proportions, like try to actually see it, how things align with each other. And then you want to try to draw it. And after you finish, just compare the drawing that you just did with a reference, and then try to observe the mistakes that you just did, like things looking off or angles looking off. You can even lay your drawing on top of the reference, just change opacity and see what doesn't really look right. Then write these things down. So basically like, okay, this is a little bit off, it should be pushed a little bit here. Like what I saw in my drawings is that I probably make the faces more wider and I just need to make them longer. And that really improved my art because I did these simple things. And then try to actually draw it again. But this time you have those notes, you know what you did wrong, and the drawing will be much better. The third thing will help you with drawing things in perspective. So pick the references of the topic that you want to improve. And here I recommend using 3D models, or you can get like packs of references of the bodies that are 360. Because we want to be able to look at the specific body part or whatever you want to improve in every angle that we want. Pretty much first we start with a basic front view. And basically you want to draw a thing in different angles, which then when you want to actually draw something, you'll be able to just draw basically anything from any angle you want. And then we want to actually apply these things. So maybe you just make a full piece, or you can even stack these, and after some time you could just put everything that you learn into one drawing. So yeah, practice with intention and actually try to understand the topic that you're learning instead of mindlessly copying. Now, if you want my brushes, that are for free in description below, and with them you'll get 30 art tips that will help you improve your art in 30 days. Lesson number 2. Next one is pretty important, and I struggled with it for a long time. Even to this day I also struggle with it. And I see whenever I have a couple of days off from drawing, I feel it immediately. My lines get shaky, the proportions are just off, and overall drawing just feels harder. And the lesson is super simple. So lesson number 2, draw daily. I see that other people just say that you don't have to draw daily, that you can just draw on weekends, but to be honest, that is not true. So pretty much in a day, you have a limited amount of things that you can actually learn. So if you bunch everything up into one day, you cannot really save that much knowledge into your brain. Therefore, I rather actually draw every single day for an hour instead of drawing on weekends for 10 hours, because drawing daily actually keeps your hands warm, your mind sharp, and your art slowly but steadily improving, instead of getting rusty or relearning the stuff that you just forgot. But also I know that in the beginning it can actually be super hard to be consistent with drawing. And obviously no, you don't have to draw every single day, because now you just heard that. And building a habit can actually take a really long time. But what really matters is not having a perfect practice each day, but to stay consistent over time. So in the beginning, whenever you just draw once a week, 3 times a week, 4 times a week, you're still consistent as long as you keep showing up. Even if you stop drawing for a whole week and pick it up again the next week, you'll still be consistent over the long term. So this process will slowly build your consistency, so you'll be able to draw daily, but also you won't burn out. And once the habit is built, it's actually really hard to break it. Lesson number 3. Have you ever started drawing and midway you just realized that it's not really as good as you wanted it to be, and therefore you just gave up? I did that, and because of that I pretty much haven't really finished a single drawing in half a year. But this method actually helped me break the cycle, and finally I fixed it. So lesson number 3, a bad drawing doesn't mean that you failed. So recently I realized that it doesn't really matter if your drawing sucks or is really bad, because in the long term I know that in a couple of months, years, I will get much better. Therefore, the bad drawing is actually necessary to grow as an artist. Simply because of this drawing, I know what I lack and also what I have to improve in order to actually become the better artist. And that's really the truth. If you just keep going, being consistent, and you improve and practice daily, there's no way that you won't improve in like a couple of months, half a year, or even a year. And with actually improving these drawings, what you can do is after you finish a drawing, or even after you're just done for the day, you can just take notes of the things that you might want to improve next time. So this thing can be as simple as, okay, next time I want to raise this arm a little bit higher, or I need to practice eyes in this perspective. Because then if you want to actually study and you don't know what to study, you can just look at your drawings, you have these notes of the things that you want to improve. So just study that. So just don't try to get every single drawing to be perfect and give up if it doesn't really look perfect, because in the long term, you'll actually become a much better artist. Lesson number 4. One time before drawing, I did something different that I've never done before. And after I finished the drawing that I did, I realized that it was much better than the previous ones. The lines were better, the lines and shapes were just cleaner, the overall drawing were just better. So next time I did the same thing, which also worked and made my drawing much better. So here's lesson number 4. Warm up before drawing. I know it's super boring to actually warm up, but it doesn't really take much time. It's anything from 5 to 10 minutes, and what it will do for your art is magical. Okay, but how do you warm up? So what I do is simply I just fill the whole canvas with circles that have different sizes. Obviously it will help you with drawing organic shapes like, you know, the ball for the head or joints, but just simply drawing circles will also be useful in your drawing. Next I'll put one dot and then shoot straight lines from it. It will help me with drawing straight lines in every angle, and also don't rotate the canvas. Then I'll put a lot of random dots and then I'll try to connect them without going over them. So this will actually help you with being more accurate, but also will help you with straight lines. So then you can also do a couple of 30 seconds gestures or just fill the whole canvas with CSI. It will help you with making like nice curves. So these things will help you warm up your arm, which will help you improve your lines and shapes in your drawing. So trust me when I say this, whenever you start drawing without really warming up, you're warming up while you're drawing. And when you start a piece, maybe the foundation will actually look off because your lines are stiff, your circles are crooked, and because of that, no matter how good your rendering be, the base will still look off. And I know something about this. So just simply take 5-10 minutes and warm up before drawing. Lesson number 5. So looking back at my older drawings, I see a ton of simple mistakes that I could have just avoided. A lot of these drawings actually look super off, and the reason is also simple. Lesson number 5, learn proportions. So I thought that I knew everything about proportions because I watched a couple of videos, but looking back at these drawings, I was super wrong. This is super important because it can be the reason that you're drawing from a reference but it doesn't really look like it. But spending like 30 to 60 seconds in the beginning to just observe the reference and look for all the proportions, the landmarks, the angles between them, and mapping everything down will help you with making a more accurate drawing. And you can even place some landmarks on the canvas. So for example, when drawing a pose, first you can observe the main line of action, then you can look for the proportions. So if the upper body is the same size as the lower body, how many heads it actually is, and depending on the pose, and perspective, those things can be different. Then I usually observe the tilts of the shoulders and hips and just put a simple horizontal line for them. Then you want to observe the landmarks and compare the relationships between them. So what angle is between the knees, if the things align vertically, horizontally, or even diagonally. Also spotting negative space will be a huge one. But what are the negative spaces? It's simply areas around your character, around your object that are just empty, and we can actually simplify them into basic shapes. So for example, if the arm is on a hip, the hole between the arm and the body will be a negative space. And what can you do with it? You can just simply simplify it to a basic shape. And then while drawing the pose, you don't have to focus on the anatomy, all these bumps. You can just simply try to draw this shape there, and it will help you with more accurate drawing. So yeah, learn and observe proportions. Lesson number 6. Knowing this lesson would actually save me a lot of time. So what I did when I started drawing, I would only focus on the outlines of the characters of the objects, because I thought that this is how you actually draw. But you probably know that it's not really how you draw characters. I mean, obviously if you are a pro, you can just start with outlines of the characters, but probably you and me aren't like pro League of Legends artists. But to be honest, even them are using this simple lesson. So lesson number 6, simplify into basic shapes. So whenever I start drawing a character, I start with simple shapes first, and then I can add more anatomy details on top. And because of these basic shapes, we can already tell how the drawing will actually look at the end. We'll see if the proportions are correct, if the pose isn't stiff, and if the overall drawing reads well. And with these basic shapes, we can pretty much tell a lot of things. And therefore, if you think that your proportions and all the poses look right, then you can move on and add some details on top, because you have a strong foundation. But if you have a weak foundation, then it doesn't really matter, because the drawing will still look off. And trust me, whenever I look at my older drawings, I see a lot of things that I would draw differently now. And if you want, I can actually do a videos where I go and basically redraw my older drawings. So let me know in the comments. Lesson number 7. Have you ever sketched a character and after you put a line art and remove the sketch layer, you just realize that it doesn't really look that good anymore? I've always had this feeling whenever I was sketching and drawing a character. Therefore, I have a different method of using lines and sketching the characters. So lesson number 7, think of line quality. So there's a couple of things that we can do to make our lines much better. So first we need to get rid of chicken scratches. These are basically these short scratchy lines. So to fix our chicken scratches, we want to be more intentional with our lines. And also we want to make them more confident. So do warm-ups and also use your whole arm. Then we want to think about the line weight. So we want to have a variety in the thickness of our brush. And with that, we can also add ambient occlusion to our line art or sketches. And the ambient occlusion is basically a dark shadow that is in areas that the light has hard times getting in. And now if you don't want to have line art in your drawing, what you can do is a simple thing that I just started doing recently. And I also saw that League of Legends artists are doing the same thing. So basically we want to leave our sketches to our finished drawing. So for that I use a simple eraser and a smudge tool, but also airbrush plus lasso tool. So after I lay a basic shapes in my sketches, I just start pretty much rendering with these simple tools. So basically pretty quickly you just see almost the finished piece, how it will look. And for that you can use these simple tools, just basically add shadows, ambient occlusion and whatever you want. Then you can just put this sketch onto the flat layer, and obviously you can change the color of the sketch, but also can create a gray base color layer and combine it with a sketch. Then using gradient maps, curves or even color layers, you can simply add color to whatever you want. Then you can just simply paint on top or even leave it as it is and have a finished drawing. Now also you can check out my monthly tutorials on Patreon, link below. So now to recap everything. So lesson number 1 was about learning. So pick a topic, then pick resources. Then you want to actually follow these tutorials, these step by steps, take notes, then practice and apply it. Lesson number 2 was about drawing daily. So build a strong habit, be consistent. Even once a week in the beginning is still pretty good. Then lesson number 3 was about bad drawings. So if the drawing that you just did sucks, it doesn't really matter because you'll be amazing at drawing in the future. But the only thing between you and the version of you that can amazingly draw is just time. Then lesson number 4 was about warm-ups. So it's super important to just spend 5-10 minutes to avoid having a messy base, and with this destroying your drawing. Then lesson number 5 was about proportions. So observe and measure the proportions, the landmarks and angles between them. Lesson number 6 was about simplification. Break everything into basic shapes, because then you'll see if the drawing actually works. And lesson number 7 was about line quality. Avoid chicken scratches, be intentional with your lines, add line weight, ambient occlusion, but also you can turn your whole sketch into a finished drawing pretty easily. But also you might be destroying your art if you're making one of these mistakes that are in this video. So here you can learn about these mistakes and actually how to fix them.